Good evening, guys. Here I'm doing a Q&A video, actually my first Q&A video, question and answer. Um, and sorry for not making a video for a while. I just posted a video about a review for Man of Steel, and I'm doing some... it's weird. It's kind of cool, actually. I've been, at least I think so, that my videos I've kind of titled like by three words. Although those are going to be kind of like my standard line videos, just one after the other. Maybe I'll even number them at some point. But there will also be sort of subset videos, like reviews, like questioning, like questioning, like question and answer videos, of course. A friend of mine, Owen, actually asked me about the topic of inflation, and now I had posted a video, excuse me, not a video, a picture, sort of meme picture on my Facebook wall, and I showed like the prices of commodities before and after, like 2007, and then current 2003, and I was like, holy shit, like 100% over 6 years. So huge amounts of inflation going on. It's not necessarily showing up all over spectrums of production evenly, because some spectrums of production are more free than others and therefore can produce more effectively. So inflation most hits those industries that are already most fascist, fundamentally. Inflation, because just fascist markets can't produce effectively. So when inflation hits fascist markets, they just totally get worse and worse, because their production can't counteract the dilution in purchasing power of unit per Federal Reserve note. So, that's where you see the highest rates of inflation. The areas of markets which are fundamentally maybe almost entirely free, well, that could in theory even be fighting inflation. I mean, they have to work against it, they have to swim up river, but they can be generating not nominal but actual purchasing power beyond the rate of inflation. So in areas like computing, consumer electronics, those are still fundamentally so free relative to the fascism and socialism that is rampant in society at the moment. And I don't confuse those with capitalism and communism ever, because watch my communism capitalism video to understand my definition here. But when I say fascism and socialism, I'm not talking about communism and capitalism. Systems of government, not systems of underlying voluntary relationships. So because of these things, like the markets that are relatively free of these bad principles of violence, kind of an oxymoron, but you understand what I'm getting at for those purposes. But the inflation is not so bad there, because they're still producing in excess of the rate of devaluation, right? So, but how do we respond was the question. Yay, I get to the question 3 minutes into the video. So the question is, how do we deal with inflation as individuals? And should we demand higher wages? It's a tricky question. The fundamental, well, there's two parts to that. How do we deal with inflation? The best way to deal with inflation is to understand that the local fiat currency you're using is just one of many, and there will be mafias around the globe that are going to be devaluating at lower rates than that. So if you can get your hands on some Canadian dollars, if you live in the northern part of the American tax livestock farm, go get some Canadian. It could be very useful to you to have some Canadian dollars, as well as maybe even Canadian stocks, because if they pay a dividend, they'll be paying you dividends in Canadian dollars, which is awesome, right? And that it also has the local factor of being in close proximity to these other human beings you're trading with, which it's nice to be close to. The idea of buying local, I absolutely love that idea as a capitalist. Buy local, because it's wonderful to see what that does on the local level. It's a wonderful feeling, and not only in feeling, but in pragmatism and in consequence and that sort of thing. Trading the wealth as close as possible to your person has wonderful effects in those relationships that you can have time with, because it's nice to see that. So, but so go outside. There are going to be fiat currencies that are not going to be collapsing as quickly, right? So, and there will be other areas of the earth which are emerging from violence that will be able to generate profit because they finally have freedom as opposed to statism. They finally have liberty as opposed to slavery. And again, nobody's quite free yet, but we're getting there. So quite soon. Yay! But get out of that. Yeah, obviously, the old school gold and silver are good hedges against inflation. As well as now you have the possibility of digital currency in the form of Bitcoin and Litecoin. Those are also probably going to be very important to hold on to. I'm thinking about buying some of those at some point myself. Not quite sure yet. The problem is that if electricity goes, you don't have Bitcoin anymore. But for what it is now, it's kind of cool. And I think that once the fundamental understanding of it as a functional digital money, well, I don't want to call it money quite yet, but as currency, and that because it's still liable upon electricity, right? Unfortunately, so it's still fundamentally a liability, but it's the best of all liabilities. I think better than any other, in a way, fiat currency that's available. Obviously, because in a way, every time somebody in a way, it's like the Fed is decentralized, right? So there's a bunch of little mini Feds out there trying to suck out liability from electricity, and I think that's way better because it means that fundamentally somebody has to own something to be able to mine it, right? But this could be a long video. But because people have liabilities to mine it, so that is by itself pretty cool. So they can't just run it off of a printing press. It's a little bit, you have to invest a little bit more in yourself to be able to do it. In a way, we're all kind of bringing these liabilities in decentralized. So it's like a decentralized central bank is the way to kind of think. The way I think about Bitcoin is it's a decentralized central bank. That's how I think I would wrap it up. And that's way better than any centralized central bank. So, but beyond these digital currencies and the original old school methods of money, which are the real true proven methods of money, gold and silver, those sorts of things go for those. Demanding, no, the idea of demanding more compensation to deal with inflation is, you can definitely do that if you wanted to try that. Now, there are two different methods of approaching higher rates of salary. One is the voluntary method, and the other one is the statist method. And you don't want to do the wrong thing, which is to use violence to get what you want. Now, I'm an anarchist. For me, to each their own mind, and to each whatever exists inside their own mind. But for me, I cannot participate in statism. So I can only participate in voluntarism. That is the way I act as a human being. And it is the core of who I am. So I might be getting a raise at the place where I deliver pizza. Who knows? In fact, could be doing delivery sort of manager stuff. So we'll see what happens. But in any case, ask for raises where you've earned them. I would say is the best way to go about it. And dealing with raises through inflation, like you'll notice that it hasn't gotten there yet, but it's entirely likely that in the near future you'll notice your raises in terms of the higher denomination notes you'll be using. But for the moment, try to deal the best you can with consuming for the future, which is to say, have your purchasing power outside of those methods of indirect transaction that are not working out well for the moment. So, your best, again, just to sort of summarize this video, the question was, what is the best way to deal with inflation, and should we demand, wage compensation in accord with inflation? And absolutely deal with it in terms of getting outside of your local currencies, potentially, as well as buying locally and getting to know and have local wonderful trade partnerships. Going into gold and silver, the old traditional methods of money that have worked for thousands of years. These new digital monies, which are sort of liabilities, but because they're liable on energy. Fundamentally, that's fundamental to Bitcoin. So we can't quite view them. I don't view them quite in the same contexts of gold and silver, but I view them very much as the best, as I'll again characterize here in the way I want to characterize them, as the best decentralized central bank that is available to you. So go with that, and see what happens there. And that's going to be what's fundamentally going to work out very well for you in the long run, when you then use these currencies to acquire other forms of wealth that can then produce in undervalued assets, right? So you're going to want to spend your gold on a farm. You're going to want to spend your gold on an apartment building. You're going to want to spend your silver, your Bitcoin, or whatever it is on stocks maybe, and new companies that are coming out as the cannabis market frees up. And it's like, oh, so we now have some freedom as opposed to fascism in society. It's like, oh, so the cannabis market comes out of fascism. That's an emerging market inside the American tax farm. So invest in those emerging markets. Like, we can find emerging markets close to us inside the local farms. We totally can inside the local zoos. And so invest in those as well. Again, so I don't want to go on for too long on extraneous tangents here, but in any case, yeah, the way to respond to inflation is to do that, and in voluntary interactions with other human beings, get better wages. Absolutely, I think that's fantastic. I think it's wonderful to be able to make more money doing what you do if you really enjoy it and if you really pursue it with passion and with happiness, and of course the pursuit of happiness. If you just stop at all men are created equal, that would have been great. Anyway, have a good night, guys. Have a wonderful evening.